All right, so this is the pre-Lab 2 video. Lab 2 is all about horizontal distance measurement using tape. So you'll hear in the industry that actually they call this pulling chain or tape sometimes.
Throwing tape?
Throwing tape. Yeah, so these are all lingo from back in the days. So, and in reality, nobody really uses steel tape anymore. However, in this class, we like showing you how things can be done, used to be done, because they really build up to understanding why we do things the way we do them today. So we're gonna learn all about using proper steel tapes, and by that I don't mean those little ones that you use to measure your furniture. It's a very specific kind that is used in surveying, right? Short distance surveying. So there's some of the equipment is right here, and I'm going to show you in a minute what it all is. But first, when we start this lab, let me run you through how the lab's going to go. The first step is we're going to pace the area. So as we talked about last lab, it's important to get a general idea of how wide, how long the perimeter is, so that when you're measuring, if something just seems off, you can think, oh wait, I'm in feet and there should be in meters or something like that, okay? After you do that, you're actually going to be separated into teams of 3 or 4. In the team of 3, so doing chaining is one of the activities that requires the most people. You can do a lot of other activities using 2 people, but in this one you need 3, sometimes even 4. And then we're going to teach you how to do it in a quick demo we're going to do in a little while. But the idea is that same area that we walked, we're going to measure, and we're going to take turns doing the different legs of this perimeter so that you can all practice the different positions. So there's 3 different positions, and again 4 if you're in a team of 4. And I want you guys getting exposure to each one of those different activities. Okay, they're a little bit complicated, and you doing properly makes a big difference in terms of how precise your measurement will be. Okay, so let me show you what we're gonna work with. All right, so first of all, we always mark, not always, but very often you'll see us in class mark our end and beginning positions of our survey with these pink flags. Actually, pink is kind of the official survey color. So if you see sometimes around town, you'll see these pink flags. It means that the surveying crews in City of Waco are doing some work there. And sometimes you see different colored ones. And the reason for that is different colors actually mean things. And I don't remember what all the colors mean, but some colors will mean gas lines or something else. So we're gonna use these pink flags. These ones, you also can see stakes that are hammered into the ground with some pink ribbon on it. We'll sometimes use those too. The flags typically they're hard to see a specific location and to measure to that location. Mostly they're there to tell you, hey, it's over here, because nails is what we really use, and they're really tough to find. Oops. So nails with also pink ribbon are actually put in the ground, and if you see them up close, they actually have a little notch in the middle, and here's exactly where you should measure to. So when you use the plumb bob, ideally the plumb bob should be not touching but hovering right above that point. You can actually make it kind of touch the point for a second just to make sure that you are on top. But the idea is that you're measuring the distance exactly from the center of this nail to exactly the center of the next nail. In surveying, there's no such thing as like around this area. No, it's exactly there or not at all, because then you start introducing error and you're gonna have an issue that's gonna carry over to the next thing. Okay, so here is your steel tape. This one is in feet. Actually, are we gonna be using feet? Yeah. I was asking if during this because we were discussing that earlier. All right, so in the lecture, I talk about steel tape, and you really want to watch those lectures before you head to lab. You have to. But this particular tape that we have, you will notice, has a red area. It has a whole foot that is marked in red, and this is called an add tape. So in an add tape, you have an extra foot. So here is 0. Let me show you. 0 is here, and then you have this extra stuff. So we're going to demonstrate how you use this and why it makes it easier when you have an add tape to use it. I don't know what other word to use. Let's see. And this is, if you see it, it's divided in tenths of a foot, not in inches. So this is important because this measurement right here does not mean 1 foot 9 inches. It means 1.9 feet. Okay, an important distinction. And again, something that we're gonna go over. Now, the good care of steel tape is paramount here. Don't let it bend or kink. Whenever you're done measuring something, very gently start pulling it back. And when it's pulled all the way back, you are going to lock it into place. Okay, that way it can't just get spun out of its holder. And again, there's a proper way of holding this. Also, you don't want it to be too hot, too cold. And there's lots of other things you need to consider. If it does have kinks or other things like that, that is something that would actually bring some error into our analysis. So we need to watch out for that. Okay. What else do we have here? So this is called a plumb bob. The plumb bob is meant to help you, because you're gonna be standing up here, to make sure that you're exactly on top of a specific spot. So if you have it marked with the flag or with tape or something else, you would use this too. And you can unroll this, and then there's a little bit of entryway here, so you can kind of lock it in place. You hold it like this, and you have to let it kind of stop moving naturally so that you know that you are level with the ground. Well, not level, actually, normal with the ground. That's the word. And both parties at the end of the tape are gonna have their own. You need to make sure that the plumb bob is perfectly straight. Also, this is very challenging to use when it's really windy, okay? If it's really windy, then the lower you get with the tape, the better. Well, the lower in general with the tape you get, the better, but particularly when using a plumb bob. Now, this is sorry, I'll go with this one first, a tension clamp. So we're going to talk about how the tape needs to be at a very specific tension for the measurements to be correct. So you don't want it sagging, and if you stretch it too much, you can actually damage it, although that's really hard to do. But there's a specific tension for which it's designed. In most cases, it's about 10 pounds. Now watch out, because in this side there's kilograms and in this side there's pounds, and clearly trying to get 10 kilograms of tension is a mistake some students make. You can just see them that they're like struggling to keep it straight. And that information is typically specific to the tape, because there's different types of tapes, there's fiberglass and whatnot, and will be provided to you in your lab. With most equipment, things here also need to be calibrated. So as you may notice, right now, this is not being pulled. However, this line is pointing at about a 1 pound, 1 pound of tension, which is incorrect. So if this happens before you begin, you can actually twist over here, and you see how it's moving up. It might be really difficult to see in the video, but it's moving up. You're basically kind of recalibrating this a little bit so that it starts at 0, and now when I actually pull to 8 or 10, it's actually 8 or 10 and not 10 to 12. Okay, so this is just a clamp. This will allow you to really stand in a good position while pulling without hurting your hand. That's really the only purpose of this. And now here we have a hand level. And this gonna feel very rudimentary when you use it, but you literally are going to use it as a scope, because as you get further and further from someone, it's harder to feel whether they're at the same level as you are, and minor changes in elevation between you and the person on the other end can actually make a big difference in a length measurement. Because if you think about it, it's a triangle, right? So this would be the straight line, and if someone's slightly higher, what you're actually measuring is the hypotenuse of a triangle, right? Does that make sense? Like this. And it's harder to do than you imagine. And even if you see that someone is higher, how high or how low you position yourself, this is why you need a third person to come in, look through the scope, and actually this stretches out like that, okay? There is a bubble here, and there's also a bubble that you'll be able to see through this. So you want the bubble, and there's no way to demonstrate this properly through the video. Maybe we'll find a picture or something.
We're gonna come in and we're gonna see what this looks like. Whoa, it's a bubble, yay. It's level, it's actually level, that's
nice.
Amazing.
But you need to position yourself so that the bubble is in between the lines. It's pretty self-explanatory once you do it, but you should be seeing the hand of the other party, of the other side of your chaining party, right where the bubble is, and then say, okay, so if I see it perfectly here and this is level, that means that you, person next to me, needs to be this high. So person on this side might have to raise the tape that high, or I might have to lower it so that that line is as straight as possible, okay? That's basically the rundown of the equipment. so now you've come to the field, and Dr. Andres, or your instructor, has set up flags in different places for you to measure a perimeter. So in some situations, the perimeter, and it's all marked with flags, and in the ground there's nails. But the nails are really hard to see, so basically the flags will give you an idea of what you're looking at. So in some of the legs, you'll only have to measure once because it's less than 100 feet of distance. In some situations, however, it might be really long, and the way you're gonna deal with that is you're gonna actually measure from this point, and I'll show you how, all the way to you hit 100, and at 100, you're gonna bring a nail with some pink tape with you, and maybe even a flag. You're gonna mark it down, leave it at the exact 100, and then everybody shifts forward to start. So if it was 0 to 100, and then 100 to, let's say, 55, then obviously this is 155, okay? So, but in this example, I mostly want to show you the mechanics of getting set up for being as precise as possible, because that's the trick. Anybody can take tape and just go, it's about 75, 76. We want to get really, really precise. And for that, remember, we're measuring from the center of a nail to the center of the other nail, so that gets tricky. All right, so 3 people need to do this. Dr. Andres over here is going to be at the first spot, and the person who stays here needs to keep this, needs to keep the steel tape, needs to keep a clamp, not handle, the clamp and a plumb bob, okay? The other person measuring the distance will be Lauren here, and Lauren has to bring the tension handle that's been calibrated, make sure you do that, and a plumb bob. And the third person, which is gonna be me, needs to bring, or I have it right here, the hand level and the notebook. Now, I did not bring my notebook right now, but every time you measure something, you wanna write it down, but I'm not gonna do it. You understand what you need to do in that end. Okay, the other part. Let's look at one part at a time. We'll look at what Dr. Andres does, then Lauren, then me separately. So Dr. A's job is to stand here and let Lauren take the tape, hold it by here, and start walking. Yes, you clip it from the clamp, and she's gonna start walking towards that direction, and she's going to stop when, with some tension, basically, kind of keep it tense, without any pulling, she can see that the nail is roughly above the red area of the tape, okay? So she's gonna kind of estimate it over there. Yeah. And meanwhile, Dr. A is going to find the nearest foot, okay? So basically you center it around 0, and you, once you do that, find the nearest foot. In this case, it's 25, okay? And you're gonna put the plumb bob string on top of that little line, and try to align this so that the plumb bob is exactly above without touching the nail. Because if it's touching it, it might be leaning and you might not be right there. Right now, Dr. A is right on, but it's gonna cost some effort because now she's gonna have to move up and down. Lauren's gonna start pulling and things are gonna move. So now she has to stay there for a good couple minutes. Now she can relax for a bit while I go over to Lauren's, and we're gonna see that side next. So on Lauren's side, Lauren wants to be in this extra foot. Remember that I mentioned that this is an add tape. She also wants to start using the tension handle so that this is between, and it's hard to see from this angle, but it's 8 to 10 pounds of tension. And at the same time, she's gonna try to position the plumb bob so that it's close to the nail and so that you could read where it's crossing to. Right now, I think you're a little bit too far in. There, right around there. Someone like me who's helping can kind of pause for a second and stop it, but without touching it too much. Now, we're not done. We could take the measurement now, but these two are not level. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take the hand level over here, and I'm going to position it like this, and I'm gonna stand right here next to Lauren's hand, and I'm gonna point towards Dr. Andres. I'm gonna make the bubble be in the middle and then have Dr. Andres move up or down accordingly. In this case, she needs to move up. Up, 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 up. A little bit right. A little bit tiny more. There.
That's crazy.
Is it?
It doesn't look like level at all, but I believe you.
It is. So from my perspective, it is. But you don't realize just how tilted the ground is sometimes till you do this. So, okay, let's do it one more time, and then everybody's gonna pull one last time. That's perfect. So right around this area, Dr. Andrews' pool, make sure this is correct. And now, is your plumb bob okay over there?
Yeah, she's getting there. All right.
All right, so now once everything's in place, Lauren is going to make sure this is good. And now we're gonna take this measurement. So again, be very careful to read properly. And remember that we said that the way that we're gonna read this, and it keeps moving because it's a little windy, but it's right around here. Okay, so you are going to read this as, and watch out because this is where it gets complicated. This counts 25 to 0, but this counts from 0 to 9 in the red numbers. And those are the ones that matter. Because basically, to get this measurement, it is 25 feet plus, it looks like this is 7.3. So you see it's in the third small line right here after you pass the number 7. Not 3, because 3 would have been measuring from here forward. So again, 25.73. I said 7.3 earlier, but yeah. 0.73 is how we're gonna measure this. Does that make sense? And if this were not an ad tape, guys, this is important because you might encounter one. This foot wouldn't exist, and let's say that the plumb bob was over here. Then you would need to take this measurement, and this is, let's say, 4.5, and you would need to remember, 0.45, you would need to remember that it is 25 minus 0.45, so it's actually 24.55 or whatever. You see how it's not that much harder, but when you're all stressed out and you're pulling and stuff and careful, it's easier to make a mistake with regular tape. At tape, you just figure out what this is and add it to the whole number she has. So 25.73 feet. And that's how we do that.
So now I'm going to sit down and actually do all these in my notebook. So with my notebook here, all right, I've got my date. We'll call it, I have no idea what date it is. I'm crew number 1, always, and the chief, as always, is Professor Sidwell. And we'll call myself the chain man. All right, so this is where I need to list the equipment that I used, and you've just done this, so you can do it. The weather is clear, and the temperature, if I looked at my phone, it gave me 48 degrees, ground cover, grass, and then I'm going to fill all this out here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, of course, we're going to go paste this. And so whenever I went out and I paced, the first time I ran it, I got 11, and then I got 11 and a half, and then I got 11 and a half again. So that means that whenever I come in here, I'm going to 11 and 11 and a half, and 11 and a half, and then the average is going to be math is hard, and by math I mean typing. Put these in here and I'll get the average, so 11.33. So 11.3, and I know that I have 2.2 feet per pace, so times 2.2, and I get an estimated distance of 24.9. And I'm just going to leave that at 2 sig figs at 25, so the estimated length is 25. Now that I'm actually going to go do this run, like we just showed, I have the line measurement from A to B, and we measured 25.73. Now I can be more precise because that's the actual measurement that I took when I was out in the field. An additional thing that we want to make sure that you note is here you can see that we've actually got the weight of tape per foot of length, whereas over here we're given the total weight of the tape and then the actual length. So if you're going to have the weight per foot, it's going to be that 2.1 divided by 100.05. So that's the weight of tape per foot. So you want to make sure that whenever you're doing your corrections, that that's that value that you use. Aside from that, everything else should be corrections just like you've been doing in your homework.